It started with a glance, just one fleeting moment when our eyes met across the room at my sister's birthday party. He was leaning against the kitchen counter, laughing at something my brother-in-law had said. His tie was slightly loosened, his sleeves rolled up to his elbows, and there was an ease about him that I hadn't noticed before. That's how it always begins, isn't it? With something so small, you almost convince yourself it doesn't matter. He's my son-in-law, Ethan, married to my daughter, Claire, for 5 years now. They have 2 beautiful kids, my grandbabies, and, from the outside, they're the picture-perfect family. But life has a way of unraveling even the most tightly woven tapestries, doesn't it? I didn't mean for any of this to happen. Not really. It wasn't supposed to go beyond those stolen glances or the occasional brush of hands when he passed me the salt at dinner, but then came the texts. Innocent ones at first. Hey, just checking in on Claire. How's she doing? Then they became more frequent, more personal. You looked tired today. Are you okay? And finally, the one that made my heart race faster than it should have. I wish I could talk to someone who understands. Understands what I wanted to ask but didn't dare. Instead, I found myself replying late at night, after everyone else had gone to bed. We'd exchange messages about nothing and everything, his frustrations with work, my loneliness since my husband passed away, the little things we both felt we couldn't share with anyone else. It felt safe, like a secret garden where no one could judge us. But secrets have roots, and roots grow deeper than you expect. One rainy afternoon, while Claire was out running errands and the kids were napping, Ethan showed up at my door. He said he needed to borrow some tools from the garage, but I knew better. The air between us crackled with unspoken words as I led him inside. He stood there dripping wet, his hair plastered to his forehead, looking at me like I held all the answers to questions he didn't know how to ask. I can't keep pretending, he blurted out suddenly, his voice trembling. I feel like I'm drowning, and every time I try to reach out, I'm met with silence. My chest tightened. Ethan, you're married. You have responsibilities. And what about you? He interrupted, stepping closer. Do you think I don't see it? The way you look at me sometimes, like you want to say something but won't, like maybe you feel it too. My breath hitched. Denial bubbled up in my throat, but it tasted bitter, because deep down I had felt it. That pull, that forbidden connection, that whispered promises of escape from the monotony of our lives. But giving in would mean betraying not just Claire, but everything I'd ever taught her about love and loyalty. I'm your mother-in-law, I whispered, my voice breaking. This is wrong, is it? He asked softly, his hand reaching out to touch mine. Or is it just complicated? That was the moment I should have walked away. Should have ended it before it spiraled further out of control. But instead, I let him hold my hand. Let him pull me into an embrace that felt both foreign and achingly familiar. In that instant, I forgot about Claire, about the vows he'd taken, about the fragile threads of trust that bound us all together. What followed was a blur series of clandestine meetings, hurried kisses in empty hallways, whispered confessions, under the cover of darkness. Each encounter left me feeling more alive, yet more broken than the last. Guilt gnawed at me constantly, but it wasn't enough to stop me. How could it be when being with him made me feel seen in a way I hadn't in years? But secrets never stay buried forever. One evening, as I sat alone in my living room scrolling through old photos on my phone, I heard the front door creak open. Claire walked in, her face pale, holding Ethan's phone in her hand. My stomach dropped. "Mom," she said, her voice shaking. "Can you explain this?" On the screen was a text thread. Our text thread. Every message, every confession, every lie laid bare. I opened my mouth to speak, but no words came out. What could I possibly say to justify what I'd done? Ethan arrived moments later, his expression stricken. "Claire, please, let me explain." "No," she screamed, tears streaming down her face. "How could you do this to me? To us? She's my mother." The weight of her betrayal crushed me. All the excuses I'd prepared, the justifications, the rationalizations, they crumbled under the force of her pain. Because in that moment, I realized the truth. I hadn't just betrayed Claire. I'd betrayed myself. In the weeks that followed, everything fell apart. Ethan moved out, taking the kids with him temporarily. Claire refused to speak to me, her eyes filled with a mixture of anger and sorrow every time she looked at me. Friends and family took sides, whispering behind closed doors about the scandal that had torn our family apart. As for me, I retreated into solitude, grappling with the wreckage I'd caused. I replayed every decision, every moment of weakness, wondering if I could have stopped it, if I should have stopped it. But the past is immutable, and regret is a heavy burden to carry. Now, sitting alone in my quiet house, I wonder if redemption is even possible. Can forgiveness ever mend the fractures I've created? Or am I destined to live with the consequences of my actions, haunted by the ghost of a love that never should have been? Sometimes, late at night, I catch myself staring at my phone, hoping for a message that will never come. But even if it did, I know I wouldn't reply. Some mistakes are too costly to repeat,